I wanted people to see survivors. I'm a thriver. I'm no longer a survivor. I'm a thriver. But I wanted people to see victims and survivors not as they're portrayed in the movies, where that's the reason they became a murderer, or that's the reason they did something horrible. Because most of us are out there just trying to get well. Most of us are out there just trying to survive. So I didn't want to write books about the trauma, but I included the trauma in the past of the various characters, so that people could see that how damaging it is, but also how hopeful it is that you can get well and you can live a life, and you're not murdering anybody.
This week I got to talk with Karen E. Osborne, who is the author of multiple suspense novels. But she also has a really cool story when it comes to her author journey. So after a 45-year career, she decided she wanted to write a book, and she ended up publishing her first novel at the age of 69. She loves sharing with everyone how you're never too old to try something, and you're never too fill in the blank, whatever your brain is telling you, like, you can't do it if you go ahead and try. So she was so much fun to talk with. She's published multiple books now, and her novels address a really wide range of societal and ethical topics, including strong women facing and overcoming adversity with grit and grace, racism, misogyny, social justice, foster care, and adoption, and also healing from post-traumatic stress disorder and sexual assault. She includes themes like forgiveness, redemption, and hope in all of her stories as well. And I mean, how do you fit all of that into just a few books? But somehow she figured out how to. She's also the host of the What Are You Writing and What Are You Reading podcast, where she also talks with authors about what they're reading and also about what they're writing. So make sure you go check out that podcast too. That being said, let's hear from Karen. You have a really interesting story where you were first published at 69, I believe. So I always ask people like when they knew they wanted to be an author. Did you know before then, or did you like get the desire to do it later?
No, this was my dream from a little girl. And
Yeah.
even when I graduated at 16 from high school, if you look in my high school yearbook, it says ambition writer.
Nice.
But one of the reasons that I talk about too is such a bad word, TOO. You're too old, you're too young, and the other, its evil twin, is not enough.
Mm.
And those things. So yes, I was busy. I got married. I had children. I had a big career, but my writing self was all caught up in too and not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Until one day, I just thought, what the heck?
Yeah. I've wanted to do this. Like, maybe I should try it out. Yeah.
Maybe I should try it out. And these characters, these two women, Kara and Alex, just would talk to me and talk to me and talk to me in my head. I'd be on an airplane going, because I was on the road every week for my job. And I would, be on the airplane and they're talking. I'm driving. I have to pull over because distracted driving. They're talking. So it was a combination of sort of getting over you're too anything and you're not enough. But also these women demanded you will write this book. So.
Yes. Yeah. That, I think, is so magical when like authors like the characters or the stories just like not bugging them, but like nudging them over and over again, that like it just seems so cool that can happen, that it's like they're just appearing there for you.
It's true. And they also make decisions for you. You've sort of got in your head kind of where we're going.
Yeah.
And no, that's not where we're going. We're going over here. They're very bossy.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I've talked to some authors who kind of in that same realm are like, I don't want it. I don't need to know what's going to happen when I sit down to write. I like surprising myself, like just like the readers are hopefully surprised with some stuff. How did your writing process develop? Do you do any planning ahead of time, or is it kind of like the characters are coming to you with the story?
So it's really organic. I don't even know the newest book that's coming out in March
Hmm.
13th, which is a murder mystery, Justice for Emerson. And so my friends were reading, my readers, I had a group of readers who helped me, writer friends. And so they'd send back the pages and they'd say, I don't know who, like, who is the murderer, Karen? I said, I don't know. And it was true. I said, I know the murderer will reveal himself.
Yeah.
I know it's a man and I know it's one of these four, and or maybe there's somebody else, I really
Right.
didn't know who the murderer was until like three-quarters of the way in.
Yeah.
And then I had to actually go back and fix some things,
Yeah.
once the murderer revealed themselves. So yes, I let my characters guide me. I mean, I have a
Hmm.
sense of plot, I
Yeah.
have a sense, yeah, and I'm following the story arc and all of that, but they're full of surprises.
That is so cool. Um, so do you do any work like getting to know the characters before you start writing? Because it sounds like they kind of come to you first. So do you kind of get to know them and then start the plot part, or how does that work for you?
So that's such a great question, Kate, because it is a combination. The characters come to me, but I do have to figure out, I have to take time and think through who they really are. I have to go back and look at what happened to them at birth. What kind of mom or dad raised them, or
Mhm.
auntie or grandma or grandpa, what trauma might have happened, what talents do they have, what are their bad side,
Mhm.
what are the things that one of my characters in Reckonings, Roxy, she would get me annoyed. I mean, I'm writing and writing and thinking, you are getting so annoying. What, like I want to shake her. Stop making the same mistakes over and over again.
Right.
So you have to know, because I try to write very complex
Hmm.
and real characters. One
Yes.
of my favorite experiences at a book club was it's a group of women who had read one of my novels. They were talking about my first one, actually, Getting It Right. And instead of talking to me, asking me questions like you're asking,
Hmm.
they were arguing about the women. Like,
Oh my
why would she
gosh.
do that? Well, because didn't you see what happened to her? I know, but she should, and I just sat there like, oh my, this is like girlfriends arguing over,
Right.
and then said, you've really written very real characters.
Yeah, totally. You kind of touched on probably the way that they're complex or the way that they're maybe making decisions is related to their past or their traumas, and something that you write about, or you write about lots of heavy topics like that in your different books. So you cover like Me Too type topics, racism, misogyny, social issues, even like adoption and PTSD as well, and sexual assault. What draws you to writing about characters with those traumas?
Yeah. So the first one, and probably three of my novels, were all because of the trauma that happened to me.
Mm,
We write what we know.
yep.
And so I wasn't writing anything that was autobiographical, but uh, I wanted I wanted people to see survivors.
Mm,
Like, I'm a thriver. I'm no longer a survivor. I'm a thriver.
yes.
But I
Yes.
wanted people to see victims and survivors not as they're portrayed in the movies, where that's the reason they became a murderer, or that's the
Mm,
reason they did something horrible. Because most
yeah.
of us are out there just trying to get well. Most of us are out there just trying to survive. So I didn't want to
Yep.
write books about the trauma,
Mhm.
but I included the trauma in the past of the various characters, so that people could see that how damaging it is, but
Yeah.
also how hopeful it is that you can get well and you can
Yes.
live a life, and you're not murdering anybody. Now
Right.
I did write two murder mysteries, but I made sure my murderers weren't really because of trauma. They were
Yeah.
just evil.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that perspective because I think we do get so used to like seeing the trauma as like a not an excuse or but an explanation for the evil character or the antagonist, however that plays out, whether they're a murderer or not. I never thought of it that way because I also do connect with main characters when they've had stuff happen to them in the past as well. But it's like you're saying, like there's a much larger group of us who is like trying to live, as you're saying, thriving lives than like people who let the trauma like eat away at themselves and turn them into like angry, evil people. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I dedicated my first book to my husband, but also to my therapist. And
Mm.
I said, thank you for helping me save my life,
Oh, yes.
right? Because you have to save your own life,
You do.
but having therapy, having spiritual connection, having community, um,
Yes.
all that helps. Yeah. And I think part of it, as we started the conversation about two and not enough,
Mm-hmm.
I think that comes out of however you were raised.
Yes.
My husband was raised by an amazing, amazing family
Mm-hmm.
and his parents, and they told him just the opposite.
Yeah.
So when the school counselor told him back in the 60s that, you weren't good enough to go to college, he just didn't believe them.
Right.
I would have believed them,
Right.
because I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm
Mhm.
not. But Bob, his mother told him he could do anything, and
Yes.
go do it. And let me, applaud it.
Yes.
So when this guidance counselor said you're not college material, my husband, who has a master's degree and an incredible career,
Nice.
he just said, like, I won't talk with you anymore about it. I'll go find somebody else to talk about it
Right.
so that I could find my way. So I think that lots of times what holds us back, it's often how somebody saw us.
Mhm.
And too often it's parents and, people
Yeah,
that,
it is.
yeah.
I like a couple of things that you said there. I did a lot of therapy, like 7 years of therapy in my 20s, for similar things. Like I was not being told you can do anything. That was not the message I was getting. But one of the things that happens in therapy is like at first, obviously, you're kind of angry at the people who have placed you in this situation, and that you have to get there, where you're mad that that's what happened. But then, like you're talking about, the next step is realizing, well, the rest, everything from here on out, is up to you now, and it's scary sometimes at first because you want to just be like, oh, it's their fault. But if you can just shift your mindset enough to be like, oh, that means I can be in charge, like I can heal myself, I don't need them to change to heal myself, like I can overcome like the bad coping mechanisms I've gotten and all of that. It can feel overwhelming, but then it's really empowering to know that, like you were saying, I get to save my life, I get to decide what's going to happen next, and it's so empowering to be able to get past something like that yourself.
It really is. And the other part of that journey that you just described is, which I think is the hardest part in a way, and that's
Yeah.
forgiving them,
Mhm.
not absolving them,
Right.
right? Because forgiveness is not about you weren't wrong, or it
Right.
is, I'm not going to carry this anger any longer.
Yeah.
I can't. So I have to forgive you
Mhm.
so that I can be free.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a hard one. I remember the first time my therapist said to me, she said, "You're going to need to find a way to forgive them." And I said, "No, if they were alive now, I would mow them down.
Yes. Yeah.
I would do something horrible to them."
Yeah.
And but as you said, as you get over that anger that I'm in charge of my life, I'm not
Mhm.
going to keep blaming them. There's also that second piece. I'm going to forgive them.
Yeah. Yep.
Very hard.
It is very hard. It's not easy. And I would almost, because I dealt with, or deal with, it doesn't go away, complex PTSD. And so that part of what I had to learn in therapy with that too was that it also wouldn't completely go away. It would kind of be there in my life, but I would
Yes.
like learn how to maybe not freak out as much when it comes up, or just have different tools to be like, oh, this overwhelming feeling doesn't have to overtake me. It'll pass, like all of that. And I think some of that is the same with anger. Like sometimes, like there are still moments where, especially if I see someone else going through a similar situation that I
Mm.
did, where sometimes I feel the anger a little bit then, but it's not something where like I'm waking up every day still thinking about it, because in some ways it can be something that keeps you connected to them instead of like releasing it.
Yeah, I think that's a great, great point. And it never goes away. It's like, if it's like you lost an arm or you lost a leg, but you've learned how
Hmm.
to live a full, rich life without
Yeah.
that arm, but the arm is still missing.
Yeah.
It's still not there. And it's just that it's a smaller part of our life, like you said, and
Hmm.
it doesn't dominate. When I was writing True Grace,
Yes. I love that cover, by the way.
isn't that beautiful?
It is beautiful.
It was actually inspired by my grandmother
Oh, wow.
and and the trauma that she went through, and her children. My father was her youngest child, and she didn't have therapy. This
Right.
was 1924, and
Hmm.
she didn't have the benefit of, she was an immigrant woman. She was a mixed race woman in Harlem in 1924 with 5 children,
Wow.
and a devastating thing happened, and
Hmm.
she had to somehow find her way, with grit and with grace,
Yeah.
and but without the tools that you and I
Right.
have, without the education, without the therapy, without any
Hmm.
of those things. She had to figure out a way. And the forgiveness piece, the reason I bring it up
Hmm.
is because in real life, her children never forgave her.
Oh, wow.
They sort of, because all of them were going through the trauma together,
Yes.
and she was fighting and fighting and trying to, use the tools she had, whatever, just the
Right.
things that she had,
Yep.
to keep her family together and for everybody to survive and for everybody to make it. And so I did end it on a happy note, but
Yeah.
in real life, um, her children. I
Yeah.
know my father; he never ever forgave her,
Yeah.
and uh, but she, even with that, she found a way to be in everybody's life, and
Yeah.
I loved her as a grandma, and you know, um, so
Yes,
it's
you still got to know her.
I still got to know her. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So that one was a little bit more historical fiction, or not a little bit more. It just was historical fiction. Was her story what drew you to writing historical fiction, or was there something else that made you want to go that route?
So I hate research. So I was never going to write historical fiction ever because
Yes.
I like making stuff up. And
Yes.
so, and you can't do that with historical fiction. You must know if aluminum didn't exist, then there can't be an aluminum shopping cart. So you have to
Right.
like, but I always wanted to write some part of her story. She was an
Mm.
extraordinary woman. And I had so much uh, good source material. So these books
Hmm.
here are all books
Yeah.
that were written about her father. So I have
Wow.
5. biographies that were written about her dad. And then I
Uh-huh.
had 300 pages, copies of handwritten letters that she had written. And
Wow.
then I had all the conversations I had with her. So it made me convince myself that the that the research wouldn't be so daunting because I had
Yeah.
some great source material right at my fingertips. But of course, then when you start going, there's just getting all the details, but it was
Mhm.
fun. Really, I loved writing it and
Mhm.
changed my mind. It's not true that I don't like research because you
Yeah.
discover the coolest things.
Right.
um, yeah. So I'm not a research for 2 years and then start writing kind of person,
Right.
but I wrote and researched and wrote and researched.
Yeah.
The story was taking me places, and then I thought, oh, what would that be like though? What did it look like? Oh, let me go look. So
Yeah. That is cool. That is
yeah,
what I would think would be daunting about writing historical fiction is like also like even how like the vernacular would be different, like all of or like the smells, like everything would be so different compared to anything we've experienced in our lives. So it does seem more daunting, but that's cool that you had those resources for it.
you know what's interesting too, Kate, is that the book is set in 1924 and we're in
Mhm.
2024,
Oh yeah.
and some of the issues are still,
You're right.
the book is historical, but it is all still so relevant,
Unfortunately, yeah.
unfortunately to today. And you can see
Mhm.
where the changes have been made. You can see where
Mhm.
what progress, not like we haven't made any progress at all,
Right.
and you can see that progress. But also, my goodness, here we are still
Mhm.
dealing with some of the same issues. So I found that really interesting,
Yeah.
the 100-year difference. The other thing
Yeah.
that most historical fiction books take place over many, many years,
Oh yeah.
and all of my novels take place like 2 weeks, 2 weeks
Mhm.
in March, 2 weeks in May, 2 weeks in, page turner. And I
Yes.
didn't want to totally give up my own style.
Yeah.
So I made the book take place over about 6 months
Yeah.
instead of years. And I did short page turning chapters, and there was always, lots of action and lots of things going on. So
Yes.
it's a little different than your normal historical fiction.
Yeah. It's your take on it. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, you kind of talked about grit and grace earlier, which I think thematically means a lot to you in multiple of your books.
Yes.
So, what is it that draws you to kind of wanting to combine those two together?
Yeah. So just to take a step back, um, there's really it doesn't look, there's no apparent relationship between each book, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's murder mystery, there's family drama, but you're exactly right. The common theme is strong women,
Mm-hmm.
flawed women who have to rely on grit and grace. And some
Mm-hmm.
of them have more of it. So Grace, in True Grace, she has a mantra, and she
Mm-hmm.
says to herself every time something hits hard, she says, I am the daughter of explorers who fought the Congo River, who built, churches and schools along the river. I am the daughter of two powerfully strong, dedicated people, and so I can do this. I come
Mm-hmm.
from grit and grace, and that was just something she had to remind herself when she thought, I can't go on. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. What am I going to do? And every time she sort of lost that,
Mm-hmm.
in Reckonings, this is Reckonings, and Roxy.
I love
Roxy
that story
didn't
too.
know she had grit and grace.
Mm.
Roxy just had a dream, and she wanted to make things happen, but she's the one who used to annoy me because She would just keep making mistakes. But she grows over the course of the 9 days of the book. She
Hmm.
comes to realize how much she does have.
Yeah.
Because another theme of my books are secrets and lies,
Yeah.
and Roxy is holding a secret,
Hmm.
which causes you to lie by
Yeah.
omission or lie by, and she just kept justifying it, like, I'm the
Right.
victim here. So
Right.
it's okay that I have secrets. It's okay that I lie because don't you understand what happened to me?
Right.
And it took her, as it did me in my own life, to
Yeah.
realize that if you keep blaming the past for your behavior, then why will anybody trust you to be different?
Right. Yeah, and you don't trust your own ability to be different too. Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly
Yeah.
right. So that grit and grace goes through all of the novels. My first murder mystery was Tangled Lies,
Mhm. I love
and
I love that.
and this
The
one,
lighting on that cover.
yeah, isn't that interesting? The
Mhm.
protagonists, the two protagonists, one is a 70-year-old black woman. All my books are multicultural,
Mhm.
multiracial, and so the protagonist is a 70-year-old black woman who comes home to find her adult son murdered, and the other protagonist is a 25-year-old white woman, Danny, who's a hot mess, and she, through a series of events, ends up working with Vera to solve the murder,
Yeah.
and the growth of both women, and what they were both seeking and didn't even know they were seeking.
Yeah.
Um, as they solve. So that one takes place 2 weeks in May, and
Mhm.
Reckonings is 2 weeks in August, and Getting It Right was 2 weeks in March.
Nice.
And then the new one that's coming out in March
Uh-huh.
13th. So now that I kind of love historical fiction, I always liked
Nice.
reading it. I mean, as a writer.
Yeah.
So it's a dual timeline.
Ooh.
So Aria, in 2 weeks, 2 weeks in the spring, April of
Yes.
2024, she finds a murder victim in the not-for-profit that she runs in the
Oh.
basement, and the dual timeline is we meet Emerson. It's justice for Emerson, and so Emerson is murdered in the first pages of the book.
Okay.
I'm not giving anything away. No
Yeah.
spoilers here.
Right.
That's the premise of the book.
Yes.
Emerson is murdered. But then from 1968, we meet Emerson. So while they're going through all the dangers of trying to find the murderer, and there's also a lovely romance in this story, as we're going
Nice.
through all of that, we're meeting Emerson from 1968 to
Wow.
to how he ended up in
Right.
that basement, killed. So that was a
Yeah.
lot of fun because I had to research Vietnam, and
Mm.
uh, you know I lived through a lot of that. So again, I had real good source material.
Mhm.
But and my husband, we've been friends since 13 and 14 years old, so we lived through
Oh,
all of
wow.
that together. So he was good source material,
Yeah.
but I still had to do a lot of research because his
Mhm.
memory was fuzzy. It was a
It is a
long
while
time
ago.
ago.
Yeah. That's cool though. So you're kind of blending the like murder mystery and historical fiction with this next one.
Yeah.
What what do you enjoy about writing like thrillers or mysteries, like kind of both of those together?
Yeah, so all my books have suspense. All of them are
Hmm.
suspenseful because that's what I like to read.
Yep.
When I think about, when I look at my reading list, and see it, everything is fast moving, lots of suspense. That's what I
Hmm.
enjoy. So I write what I I write what
Yeah.
I enjoy, but I also like to learn and get better. So I try different things. So this dual
Right.
timeline was a new thing for me. But
Hmm.
I love mystery. I love suspense. I like I
Yeah.
like books that that move, short chapters and
Same.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been kind of saying I'm a little bit of a pacing snob because I just like things to move quickly. I can't help myself.
That's me. Don't
Yeah.
slow me down. Tell me enough. Let me see, smell,
Yes.
hear, but don't give me a page of description. I
Yes.
want, right? I
I
get it.
know.
Let's keep
I
moving.
know. It's wonderful that some people like love purple prose. They love to read it. They love to write it. I'm just like, okay. So like, what question can I be thinking about? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, I think I've got the setting down. But I mean, to each their own. I know people
Yes.
love to read it and they love to write it too. So that's cool too.
Yeah.
Um, so you've had a pretty almost like unconventional journey towards being an author. Do you have any advice for people who kind of like you're talking about are maybe struggling with the too old, too unintelligent, like whatever that is telling them or not enough? Do you have any advice for people who have thought about writing but maybe have head trash stopping them?
Yeah. I actually wrote a blog post about this. You know, writers write.
Mm,
Writers write. So if that is what you want to do, even
mm-hmm.
if it's 15 minutes a day,
Yeah.
my son is an author as well, but
Oh, that's
he's got
cool.
family and he's got um, a big job. He owns a company. He's traveling the country and the world, although a little less
Hmm.
now since Zoom is so wonderful. But
Yes.
he's so busy. But he committed to 15 minutes a day, and so
Nice.
he writes short stories, and so he's in publications, at least 3 publications a year,
Wow.
just from that steady. So my first piece of advice is whatever time you have, I meet people and they say, "Oh, I've always meant to," or "I'm planning on," or "I've been
Hmm.
thinking about." Writers write. Find 5 minutes, find 15
Yeah.
minutes. Who can't find 15 minutes?
That's a really good point.
Right? And just get started. And then the other thing that's so important is work on your craft.
Mm.
I can't watch a movie without thinking about the story. How did they do that? How did
Yes.
that writer do that? I can't watch a movie without looking at the actors' expressions and how they convey something just with an expression. And can I capture that?
Hmm.
Could I capture that in a story?
Yes.
When somebody just has that look and you know exactly what they're thinking and you know what they're feeling, is there a way for me to describe that with words?
Mm.
I hear a great word and I just keep a little book in my purse. And I think that is a coolest. I don't know if I can say this out loud. I hope I can say this, but
You
I just
can.
heard this word, unfuck your life.
Ooh, I like that.
I love that, Kate. And so I,
Yes.
I had I wrote it down. I said, I'm not sure where. I don't know who's going to
Yeah.
say it. I don't know, but I'm going to. And sure enough, I found the perfect place in Reckonings for the
Oh, that's
father
awesome.
to say that to his son. You got your life,
Yes.
So I write down words, mostly nice words. I write down words that just grab me. And so the other
Hmm.
thing is to always be working on your craft. So writers
Hmm.
write and writers keep trying to get better.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is just recognize that rejection
Mm.
is part of. And could I share my rejection story?
Yes, please.
So book number one came out. I found an agent. It was all magical, wonderful.
Yeah.
Now I write book number two. Rejection, rejection, rejection. So I was talking to my son, and he said, "Mom, you can't like send out to two people, you get rejected, you feel bad, you don't do anything for 3 months." He said,
Yeah.
"This is a commitment. You wrote a good book. It is really good. It's not for everybody. Every book isn't for everybody."
Right.
So I set a goal. of 100 rejections. I wouldn't stop until I hit 100 rejections.
I love that.
78, number 78 was the last rejection, and then 79 was a yes.
Wow.
But listen to this part, Kate. So 79 was a yes.
Uh-huh.
The book came out, Tangled Lies, came out a year later from the contract, because it takes about a year for the publisher to.
Catch
And
up.
on
Yeah.
that day, he reaches out and he says, "Do you have another one?"
Whoa.
Yes, yes, I do. Send it to me. I send it to him. He sends me a contract.
Wow.
What that one comes out a
Uh-huh.
year later. Do you
Yeah.
have another one? I said, "Oh, I only have like 30,000 words. I'm
Yeah.
not really." He said, "Send me a blurb. Tell me where you're going. Tell me what you're doing." He
Mm-hmm.
sent me a contract. So from 78 rejections to "Do you have another book?" So you
Yes.
can't you can't let rejections. So writers write, work on your craft, and don't let rejection get in your way. And if you are thinking you're to this or you're not enough, you got to figure out, how do I work that out for myself? What am I going to
Yeah.
do about that? Because those are two heavy pieces of luggage that just
Yeah.
drag you down.
They do. They really do. I love all of that advice. When you were talking about, you're like thinking about it even when you're watching movies. I've been talking a little bit about how I try to go to the movies like in the middle of the day when no one's there so that I can sit in the back row and take notes. Because I just love taking notes on like how different stories manage different things, like you're saying, and just like all the things that people all the themes that can be incorporated into stories and everything too. Um, so I'm with you on that. I just love paying attention to story now even more, and it's just a lot of fun. And I'm working on a book myself.
Oh,
And to your point, like you do, sometimes it's kind of like when you start to, I always think of it as like my inner child always wanted to write, but like the message was very much, which isn't uncommon, that like you're not going to make money that way, like that's not a useful thing to go after, be a
mm,
lawyer, all of that kind of messaging, and kind of what you're saying, like when you go to start it, even if you think you've like moved past the head trash, for me, when I start doing something that challenges the programming of my past, then like the critic voice gets even louder because it's like, wait, wait,
yeah.
wait. And it gets like really loud. And it can become such a good exercise in like, at least for me, it can even be like, it doesn't matter if what I write is bad right now. It doesn't matter.
Ah,
Like just write. Like you it really helps you challenge the voices that are like, well, what if you're bad at it? And it's like, well, I probably will be at the beginning anyway. So it's like, just why don't you just go ahead and do it? So I love what you're saying. You do have to let go of whatever head trash is there so that you can even at least try it out.
I love that expression, head trash. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's
That's
exactly right.
definitely from my
Because without giving
therapist.
it, by calling it that, you're not giving it power.
Yes.
I mean, it is trash. It is head
Mm-hmm.
trash. So I love that. That's a great
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah, it really helps to just there was a point in therapy, which this is a really really specific reference, but the third Spider-Man movie with Toby, not to is that Toby?
Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, yeah, it is Toby. I don't know why it sounded weird when I said it. The concept is like there's like that like black goo that overtakes him and turns him into like an evil Spider-Man basically.
Mm,
So there are all these scenes sometimes where like the stuff is like stretching out of him, and the story definitely follows the lines of like almost, if we were looking at it really deeply, not letting your like shadow self like overtake you in some ways. And so that was even a visual I started using for a while, where it helped me separate it, kind of like you're saying, separate it from my identity or myself. So then when those thoughts were coming up, I was like, okay, this is just like that like black, which it turns out to be like the venom the venom liquid, basically. Um, and it does help. It does help give you that separation away from it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Visualization is such a good tool, and it also makes
Hmm.
us be better writers.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, because if
totally.
you can visualize something, then you can capture it,
Yeah.
um, on the paper. So, what kind of book are you writing?
I'm writing a thriller that takes place in like a reality TV show uh
Mm.
setting, essentially. Kind of, I wanted to do like a family like the Kardashians in terms of the mass appeal, but that they did it by appearing super approachable. So they're kind of play acting this idea. They're like, oh, we're just like you, but like also they're like crazy rich. But it it appealed to people in their like approachability or accessibility. And my main character is a journalist who, like, 5 years ago when she was in college with the daughter of the reality family, that daughter killed her best friend. And she knows it happened, but she never had proof. And she knew that like she couldn't go up against the machine that is that family, the Atwoods. And so she had to kind of learn to let go of it and like deal with it and accept it and all of that. But then she gets assigned a piece on the family. And so she decides to take that opportunity to go do the work, but to also maybe sniff around a little bit and maybe get some proof.
Oh, that sounds cool. That sounds like a great
Thank you.
premise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Well, when you finish,
Hmm.
come on my show and talk to me about it.
I would love to. That was going to be my next question, too. I know why I started my podcast, but what led you to starting your podcast?
So, Tangled Lies, my murder mystery, my first murder mystery. Justice for Emerson is a second, but Tangled
Hmm.
Lies came out when COVID hit.
Yep.
So there was no way for any of the writers in my life or me.
Hmm.
So I thought, well, I'm pretty good at this. I'm pretty good at, because that's what I did for a living. I talked, I taught, and try. I'm
Yeah.
always happy to be up on a stage and do that. I'm not very good at cocktail parties, but I'm great on the
Same.
stage. and
Yeah.
so, and so I just said, I'll just start it, and I'll invite authors who are having the same struggle I am. So now I'm over 200 episodes. We're almost four. It'll be 4 years old in March, and we talk about not just like what you and I were just talking about, and then
Hmm.
I also ask for book recommendations so
Yeah.
that I love, what are my writers reading. So
Yes.
every episode is about 20 minutes long, and it's talking about their books and then talking about what they're reading.
Yeah. That we have such a similar timeline. I started right before, like, the first one I recorded was like the December, so that would have been December 2019, so like right before
Oh, right
everything
before it
went
hit.
down.
Mm-hmm.
But I started noticing too that year where I was like, oh, I think in some ways it wasn't intentional at the time, but I think I was able to get more access to people because everyone was getting more used to doing things online or on Zoom. And like you're saying, they couldn't do press tours in the same way at all. And I mean, I just passed 200 episodes too, so we are just like,
Oh,
we are little podcast sisters or kind of twins a little bit. And that's what I ended up doing too. I do author interviews, and then I also do episodes with like bookstagrammers, booktubers, where we just
mm,
do book recommendations
that's
on
cool.
that. So I love hearing these like 4-ish year old podcasts that have popped up for sure. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it is cool. It's good. My daughter-in-law is a podcaster,
Oh,
and
nice.
she interviews authors who are cooks, cookbooks,
Ooh.
and decorating.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, Susie Chase, and she hers are really, so it's just that, just
Yeah.
books, just books about food and and house decorations, and it's a really
Yeah.
cool podcast. It's fun.
Yeah. I'm going to have to link that. I'm sure we have
Yeah, and
some
she's
people.
she's older than both of us. Not in
Okay.
years, but in in
The
how many
podcast.
years? Yes.
Okay.
The
First, I was
pod,
like, wait.
no, but she's not older than I am, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's dinner party.
Ooh, I love that title.
Dinner party. Susie
That is
Chase.
cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's
I'll
it's
definitely
it's
link that because I'm
it's
sure we
fun.
have
It's a
some people
fun,
who'd be interested.
short, 15 minute.
Nice.
Yeah, very very cool.
That's awesome. Well, on the note of book recommendations, I do always ask authors at the end if they've read anything recently that they loved. So, have you read anything recently?
I just finished a book that was totally out of my, what I normally read, and
Yeah.
it was called The Wedding People.
Oh, yeah. I've been hearing a
It
lot
was,
of good things.
oh my goodness, it was so fun, and I listen mostly to books because
Yeah.
I'm a multitasker, and
Yep.
so I'm doing things around the house. I'm taking a walk. I'm on my treadmill. I've got a book in my
Yes.
ear, and I would all of a sudden just laugh out loud, and then you'd see the other people in the gym kind of just giving you a look
Yeah.
because, but it was also poignant, and
Nice.
it dealt with a lot of important issues. So that was a very good book. And then I love Lessons in Chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
That was so well done with a dog as a character.
Yeah.
That was just so amazing how well she did that. How well she made that dog such an important part of the story, and with a
Yeah.
personality. He even had trauma. He had a backstory. you know,
I haven't read it yet because I know that it's heavy at the beginning and I haven't been in the mood quite yet for it, but that is fascinating.
oh, it's really, really, and the heaviness won't weigh you down.
Okay, that's good to
It
know.
won't weigh you down. It's an empowering
Nice.
story about a woman in the 60s. That
Right.
we just have to overcome so much,
I
so
know.
much. Anyway,
I
that was a
know.
really fun one. But the wedding people also has a trauma that it starts with, but it's nothing that weighs
Okay.
you down. You're moving along. You're moving along.
Mhm.
You're laughing. You're wondering where this is going,
Yeah.
and then you
Yeah,
think
that's
you know where
awesome.
it's going, and then she throws in a twist, and
Oh,
you
that's
go,
cool.
"Oh no! I thought this was
Because
like
it's not really a
over."
thriller, right?
But it's not a thriller.
But there's still
But
a
it has
twist.
that
That's cool.
it has that feel,
Yeah.
that you just want to know. Yeah, it was very much out of my norm, but I loved it.
Yeah. I one of my friends who's on the podcast, her name is Steph. She kind of had similar feedback where like she mostly reads thrillers, but she just absolutely adored that book. I'm like, clearly I need to pick this one up.
Yes.
Where can people follow you to stay up to date with everything?
So my website is the easiest.
Mm-hmm.
That's which is Karen E.
Mm-hmm.
Osborne, Osborne. So got to get those E's in there.
Yeah.
KarenEOsborne.com. And I also have a Facebook author page, Karen E. Osborne Author. I'm on Instagram, Karen E. Osborne um, Author. And I'm on LinkedIn
Nice.
and YouTube. I have a YouTube channel.
YouTube. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can find me. But if you go to my website, you can get to every place else
All
that
of
I
it.
am.
Okay. Nice. So I'll link that website in the show notes so everyone can
Thank you.
go follow wherever they prefer to follow. But thank you for coming on. I love the conversation we got to have.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Thank you so much for inviting me.